Hello friends, today we will gain knowledge about the value of biodiversity, consumptive use, productive use, social, ethical and aesthetic and option value, and our main objectives will be to gain knowledge of the concept of biodiversity, to ascertain the value and importance of biodiversity, to be familiar with the indirect and direct values of biodiversity, to understand the ecological importance of biodiversity. Friends, let me first introduce you the term biodiversity. Bio means life, diversity means variety. Biodiversity is the term given to the variety of life on the earth and the natural patterns it forms. Biological diversity or biodiversity is that part of the nature which includes the differences in genes among the individuals of a species, the variety and richness of all the plant and animal species at different scales in space, locally, in a region, in the country and the world, and various types of ecosystems, both terrestrial and aquatic, within a defined area. It is formally defined in the Biological Diversity Act 2002 as the variability among living organisms from all sources and the ecological complexes of which they are part, and includes diversity within species or between species and of ecosystems. Now friends, let's learn about the types of biodiversity. Biodiversity is divided into three types, and those are genetic diversity, species diversity, ecosystem diversity. Now students, we will understand these one by one. First of all, we will take genetic diversity. It is the diversity within a species. The genes found in organisms form enormous number of combinations, each of which give rise to some variability. Each member of any animal or plant species differs widely from other individuals in its genetic makeup because of the large number of combinations possible in the genes that give every individual specific characteristic. For example, all rice varieties belong to the species Oryza sativa, but there are different varieties which differ in their shape, size, aroma due to variations at the genetic level. Second type of biodiversity is species diversity. It is the diversity between different species. The number of species of plants and animals that are present in a region constitutes its species diversity. This diversity is seen both in natural ecosystems and in agricultural ecosystems. Some areas are richer in species than others. More species biodiversity means more biological wealth. For example, tiger, cat. Third type of biodiversity is ecosystem diversity. It is the diversity within a region. An ecosystem develops its own characteristic community of living organisms depending upon the availability of abiotic resources, environmental conditions and other factors. This is the diversity of ecological complexity, showing variations in ecological niches, trophic structures, food webs, nutrient cycling, and so on. In addition, ecosystems also show variations with respect to physical parameters like moisture, temperature, altitude, precipitation, etc. There are a large variety of different ecosystems on Earth which have their own complement of distinctive interlinked species based on the differences in the habitat. Thus, there occurs tremendous diversity within the ecosystems along these gradients. For example, a pond possesses different sets of flora and fauna as compared to the river ecosystem. Dear students, let's move on to value of biodiversity. Biodiversity services have several different types of values, both linked to and are independent of human perception. Use values are related to direct, indirect, or optional use of biodiversity and related services. Biodiversity can also have non-use and intrinsic value, whereas the value of provisioning services often manifests itself through market prices. The importance of biodiversity as a part of ecosystem processes in producing, regulating, cultural and supporting services is not traditionally captured in financial markets. Biodiversity has many direct economic values related to species that are bought and sold in the marketplace. For example, forests, fishing, and rangeland commodities, and many indirect values such as various kinds of outdoor recreation that do not require direct harvest of species. Biodiversity is essential for maintaining the ecological functions including stabilizing of the water cycle, maintenance and replenishment of soil fertility, pollination and cross-fertilization of crops and other vegetation, and protection against soil erosion and stability of food producing and other ecosystems. The world now acknowledges that the loss of biodiversity contributes to the global climate change. Forests are the main mechanism for the conversion of carbon dioxide into carbon and oxygen. The loss of forest cover, coupled with the increasing release of carbon dioxide and other gases through industrialization, contributes to the greenhouse effect. Global warming is melting ice caps, resulting in a rise in the sea level, which will submerge the low-lying areas in the world. It's causing major atmospheric changes, leading to increased temperature, serious droughts in some areas, and unexpected floods in other areas. Thus, the value of biodiversity is immense. The value of biodiversity is classified into direct and indirect values. Biodiversity, in terms of its commercial utility, ecological services, social and aesthetic value, has enormous importance. We will now discuss about direct values of biodiversity. These are those ways by which we can directly use biodiversity for our benefit. For example, we can use plants as food or for deriving medicines in the laboratory. Economic value and recreation value come under this category. Direct values are concerned with the enjoyment or satisfaction received directly by biological resources. They can be relatively easily observed and measured, often by assigning prices to them. It's depending upon the products harvested by the people. The direct value include food resources like grains, vegetables, fruits, which are obtained from plant resources, and meat, fish, egg, milk and milk products from animal resources. These also include other values like medicine, fuel, timber, fiber, wool, wax, resin, rubber, silk and decorative items. Direct values are further classified into consumptive use value and productive use value. Consumptive use value. Consumptive use value is the value put on the products of nature which are consumed directly without passing through a market. For example, if we use firewood by cutting down a tree or consume an animal after hunting it, consumptive use values seldom appear in national income accounts. The most important point of consumptive use is that some rural communities closest to the forests or other natural areas can prosper through the sustainable harvesting of wildlife species. Moreover, fossil fuels like coal, petroleum, natural gas are also the products of biodiversity which are directly consumed by humans. The most fundamental value of biological resource, particularly plants, is providing food. Basically, three crops, that is wheat, maize and rice, constitutes more than two-thirds of the food requirement all over the world. Diversity is critical for developing new strains and breeds, that is, they suit a particular environment or are resistant to pests or disease, and as a source of new crops. Fisher folk are highly dependent on fish and know where and how to catch fish and other edible aquatic animals and plants. Through the development of aquaculture techniques, fish and fish products have become the largest source of protein in the world. Depending upon value assigning to the goods such as fuel wood that are locally consumed and not at national and international level. The traditional medical practices like Ayurveda utilizes plants or other extracts directly. In allopathy, the pharmaceutical industry is much more dependent on natural products. About 80% of the people in developing countries use plants as primary source of medicine. 57% of the 150 most prescribed drugs have their origins in biodiversity. Many drugs are derived from plants like quinine. The famous anti-malarial drug is obtained from cinchona tree. Penicillin, a famous antibiotic, is derived from Penicillium, a fungus. Tetracycline, it's obtained from bacterium. Recently, vinblastine and vincristine, two anti-cancer drugs, have been obtained from Catharanthus plant, which has anti-cancer alkaloids. Productive use values. Productive use value is the value put on the products of nature which are consumed after passing through market. For example, if we buy fish from the market, then it will have productive use value. Thus includes the resources harvested from wild, sold in national and international markets such as timber, medicinal plants, for example, ginkgo, ginseng, fish, furs, wild fruits, veggies, fibers, gums, resins, etc. Although there is an international ban on the trade of products from endangered species like tusks of elephants, fur of many animals, etc., these are traded in market and fetch a booming business. The biotechnologists use biorich area to prospect and search for potential genetic properties in plants or animals that can be used to develop better varieties of crops that are used in farming and plantation programs or to develop better livestock. Genetic diversity enables scientists and farmers to develop better crops and domestic animals through careful breeding. Originally, this was done by selecting or pollinating crops artificially to get a more productive or disease-resistant strain. Today, this is increasingly being done by genetic engineering, selecting genes from one plant and introducing them into another. Preservation of biodiversity has now become essential for industrial growth and economic development. A variety of industries such as pharmaceuticals are highly dependent on identifying compounds of great economic value from the wide variety of wild species of plants located in undisturbed natural forests. This is called biological prospecting. We will now learn about the indirect values of biodiversity. These are those ways by which we don't physically use a plant or animal, but by virtue of its existence, it provides services that keep the ecosystem healthy. It can be thought of as the value of biodiversity that provides both present and future economic benefits, but are not harvested or damaged during use. Usually, it occurs outside the mainstream of economic consideration, although much economic benefit provided typically considered public goods and occur in common areas. Indirect values are assigned to biodiversity, which provide benefits to people without consumption of the resources. Benefits are water quality, soil protection, recreation, education, scientific research, regulation of climate, and producing future opinion for human society. More specifically, most indirect use values are non-consumptive use values. Indirect values are hard to define and quantify. Indirect values would include option value, existence value, cultural or spiritual value, ethical or moral value, aesthetic value, ecological value. Now friends, let's talk about option value. Keeping future possibilities open for their use is called option value. It's impossible to predict which of our species or traditional varieties of crops and domestic animals will be of great use in the future. To continue to improve cultivars and domestic livestock, we need to return to wilder relatives of crop plants and animals. Option value is the intangible values of biodiversity, that is, keeping options for the future and simply knowing that certain species exist. A species' potential to provide an economic benefit to human society at some point in the future is its option value. As the needs of the society change, so must the methods of satisfying those needs. The option value of species could be only recently utilized by human beings. There are many plants and animals which have not yet been discovered, or even if they have been discovered, we do not know if they can be of any use to us. It is concerned with the value of species, its potential to provide economic benefit to human society in the future. This untapped potential is referred to as option value. For example, health agencies and pharmaceutical companies, as they are making a major effort to collect and screen species for compounds that have the ability to fight cancer. There might be a plant or animal which can be used in the future to find a cure for cancer. If we destroy biodiversity, then we lose the chance of finding cure for cancer. Biotechnology industry is finding new species to handle pollution and combat problems of cancer, AIDS, etc. In some cases, well-known species have been found to have exactly those properties needed to deal with the significant human problem. Thus, biodiversity has great potential of being useful to us in the future. Now friends, we will talk about existence value. It's concerned with the protection of wildlife, charismatic animals such as lion, panda, birds, etc. Indirect way to contribute money to organizations. Existence values are an unusual and somewhat controversial class of economic value, reflecting the benefit people receive from knowing that a particular environmental resource such as Antarctica, the Grand Canyon, endangered species, or any other organism or thing exists. Existence value is prominent example of non-use value, as they do not require that utility be derived from direct use of the resource. The utility comes from simply knowing the resource exists. The idea was first introduced by John V. Crutilla, though he used the term sentimental value. For example, existence value is the benefit often reflected as a sense of well-being of simply knowing that marine biodiversity exists, even if it is never utilized or experienced. People simply derive benefit from the knowledge of its existence. the considerable importance which the wider public attach to maintaining diverse marine life is revealed through their interest in marine-based media presentations such as the Blue Planet. Thus, existence value is separate from the value accruing from any use or potential use of the asset. Social and cultural values. Social value of biodiversity lies in the more and more use of resources by affluent societies, local use or sale of products. If biodiversity is not included in it, yet ecosystem people value biodiversity as a part of their livelihood as well as through cultural and religious sentiments, while traditional societies which had a small population and required less resources had preserved their biodiversity as a life-supporting resource. Modern man has rapidly depleted it, even to the extent of leading to the irrecoverable loss due to extinction of several species. The biodiversity has to a great extent been preserved by traditional societies that valued it as a resource and appreciated that its depletion would be a great loss to their society. The survival of natural areas and species are important to different cultures around the world. Thousands of cultural groups in the world have distinct traditions and knowledge for relating to natural world. Many religions identify themselves with such plants and animals which renders to them a cultural or spiritual value. Many plants and animals are considered holy and sacred in India and are worshipped like tulsi, people, cow, snake, etc. Sacred value was attached to patches of forests believed to be the abode of gods and ancestors and utilized only for prayer and related rituals. A network of such sacred groves is still in evidence in some parts of India. Now, we will talk about ethical and moral values. Ethical values related to biodiversity conservation are based on the importance of protecting all forms of life. All forms of life have the moral right to exist on earth. Man is only a small part of the earth's great family of species. Plants and animals have an equal right to live and exist on our planet. Apart from the economic importance of conserving biodiversity, there are several cultural, moral and ethical values which are associated with the sanctity of all forms of life. Indian civilization has over several generations preserved nature through local traditions. This has been an important part of the ancient philosophy of many of our cultures. We have in our country a large number of sacred groves or diors preserved by tribal people in several states. These sacred groves around ancient sacred sites and temples act as gene banks of wild plants. People must learn to live within the ecological constraints of the planet. They must learn to minimize the environmental damage and take responsibility for their action. People also have responsibility to future generation of humans to keep the earth in good condition. Now the aesthetic value. Knowledge and an appreciation of the presence of biodiversity for its own sake is another reason to preserve it. Quite apart from killing wildlife for food, it's important as a tourist attraction. Biodiversity is a beautiful and wonderful aspect of nature. Sit in a forest and listen to the birds. Watch a spider weave its complex web. Observe a fish feeding. It's magnificent and fascinating. In India, particularly our history and culture is replete with the plant and animal imagery. symbols from wild species such as the lion of Hinduism, the elephant of Buddhism, and the vehicles of several deities that are animals have been venerated for thousands of years. The sage Valmiki begins his epic story with the couplet on the unfortunate killing of a crane by a hunter. The sacred basil or the tulsi has been placed at our doorsteps for centuries. People spend tens of billions of dollars annually in these pursuits, proof enough of their value. Thus, biodiversity has immense aesthetic value for us. Natural landscapes at undisturbed places are a delight to watch and also provide opportunities for recreational activities like bird watching, photography, etc. It promotes ecotourism, which further generates revenue by designing of zoological parks, botanical gardens, national parks, wildlife conservation, etc. Ecological role of biodiversity. Every species plays a unique role in the ecosystem. All the species in ecosystem participate in the numerous ecological processes that occur within and between the ecosystems. Through this role, it maintains the ecological balance. Thus, the ecosystems don't get disrupted. So, even if we do not use a plant or animal for making products in our industries, by virtue of its very existence in the wild, it provides us with many important services. These services maintain ecological balance and the ecosystem. The most important benefit of biodiversity is maintenance of environment services, which includes waste management, cycling of water and nutrients, food production, climatic stability, reduction in pollution, soil generation and reduction in soil erosion, production of energy or producers, consumers, reduction in natural calamities, decomposition. Now friends, let's conclude our topic with some important points. Biodiversity means the variety and variability of all living organisms. Biodiversity constitutes the biological wealth and is studied at three levels: genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. Biodiversity, in terms of its commercial utility, ecological services, social and aesthetic value, has enormous importance. Conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity is fundamental to ecologically sustainable development. Every country has the responsibility to conserve, restore, and sustainably use the biological diversity within its jurisdiction, as every country is characterized by its own biodiversity depending mainly on its climate. Hope you have understood today's topic. Thank you.